Imagine you're walking through a bustling market in Berlin in the late 1990s. You hand over your credit card, fill out a paper form for a loyalty discount, and go about your day. Back then, you had no idea where that paper went, who looked at it, or if it was sold to 5 different marketing companies. That was the Wild West era of data. Before GDPR, laws were fragmented, a patchwork quilt where one country had strong rules and its neighbor had almost none. The book's definition of this era is regulatory fragmentation, which basically means the rules were so messy that businesses couldn't function across borders, and citizens had no real power over their own information. Think of it like trying to play a soccer game where every player on the field is using a different rulebook. It was chaotic, and individuals were the ones paying the price with their personal privacy. So now that we've mastered why the old way of doing things was essentially a chaotic privacy vacuum, you might be wondering how we got to the point where the world finally decided enough was enough. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the rising power of the digital citizen. As we moved into the age of social media, the data problem exploded. Imagine you are sitting at your desk in Paris and you realize that a company you bought a pair of shoes from 3 years ago knows your home address, your shopping habits, and even your travel history. Yet, you never permitted them to keep that data indefinitely. People started feeling digitally naked. The formal definition of our fundamental right to privacy is found in Article 8 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, which guarantees that everyone has the right to the protection of personal data concerning them. In simple terms, this means your data belongs to you, not the company that happens to hold it. You have probably seen this in the office when a colleague gets frustrated because they can't get a company to delete their old employee records. This growing frustration was the fuel for the GDPR fire. It wasn't just about technical glitches, it was about human dignity. So now that we have mastered the idea that your data is actually a fundamental extension of you, you might be wondering how the lawmakers finally turned that human right into a massive enforceable set of rules. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the birth of the GDPR. In 2016, the European Union passed the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which replaced the old, tired 1995 directive. The definition of GDPR is a comprehensive legal framework designed to harmonize data privacy laws across Europe, protect and empower all EU citizens' data privacy, and reshape the way organizations across the region approach data privacy. In simple terms, it was the great reset of the internet. Think of it like upgrading from a broken wooden fence around your backyard to a high-tech security system with cameras and alarms. Suddenly, companies had to ask for clear consent, and if they messed up, they faced fines that could actually put them out of business. It wasn't just a suggestion anymore, it was a mandate. I remember when this hit the business world, everyone was scrambling to update their privacy policies overnight. It was the moment privacy stopped being a legal headache and started being a core business requirement. So now that we have mastered the transition from a weak directive to a powerful regulation, you might be wondering how this actually stops the data-hungry companies that were previously out of control. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the principle of accountability. The heart of the GDPR is something called accountability. The official definition states that the data controller is responsible for and must be able to demonstrate compliance with the principles relating to the processing of personal data. To put it simply, if you collect it, you own it, and you better be able to prove you handled it correctly. Imagine you are a manager at a firm in Dublin. You can't just tell the regulator, "I promise we are careful." You have to show the paperwork. It's like being a chef in a busy kitchen. You don't just say the kitchen is clean, you have the health inspection logs to prove it. This shift from trust me to show me changed everything. It forced companies to map their data flows and document why they were collecting every single piece of information. If you couldn't justify why you needed a customer's date of birth, you had to stop collecting it. So now that we have mastered the heavy burden of being accountable for every byte of data, you might be wondering what happens when a company gets a little too curious about your personal life. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the power of choice and control. One of the most important concepts in GDPR is data subject rights, which are the rights individuals have regarding their personal data, including the right to access, the right to rectification, and the right to be forgotten. In simple words, this is the remote control for your digital life. You can ask a company, "What do you know about me?" That's access. "That's wrong, fix it." That's rectification. Or "Delete everything you have on me right now." That's the right to be forgotten. You've probably seen this at the office, where a customer sends an email asking for their records to be wiped, and the team panics because they don't know where the data is stored. It's a powerful tool because it forces companies to treat people like humans, not just data points in a spreadsheet. It's about giving you the steering wheel back in a world where companies were trying to drive your life for you. So now that we have mastered how individuals can take back control of their own information, you might be wondering how all of this impacts the future of global business. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the global Brussels effect. We have reached the point where Europe's rules aren't just staying in Europe. We call this the Brussels effect, where EU regulations become the de facto global standard because it is simply too expensive for companies to have different privacy settings for every country. When the GDPR passed, it didn't just change London or Paris. It forced tech giants in California and manufacturers in Asia to change their systems to match European standards. As an auditor or a privacy professional, you are part of this global shift. You aren't just enforcing a regional rule, you are helping build a new, safer standard for the entire internet. It is a massive responsibility, but it is also an incredible opportunity to be a guardian of trust. You have now moved from understanding the why of the GDPR to seeing the how it shapes the modern world.